Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome to this ultimate Metahuman Masterclass workflow video. I'm Sam with Rokoko and I'm super excited about this. There's a lot of curiosity about how to work with metahumans, and there should be because they are incredibly accurate, detailed, free characters that are equipped with facial mocap capability that are available right now for everyone. In this video, we're going to be covering how to get your Rokoko motion capture properly exported out of Rokoko Studio, then how to batch import multiple animations into Unreal Engine, how to get that motion capture onto your Metahuman in Sequencer. We're going to take a look at how to use the Metahuman control rig to do some IK mocap editing, which makes it really easy to clean up your motion capture in Unreal Engine. And then we're also going to cover how to live stream your motion capture in real time from Rokoko Studio to Unreal Engine to your Metahuman, and how to use Metahuman Animator, the incredible facial motion capture system from Epic, and combine that facial motion capture with your Rokoko body and hand motion capture. Finally, we're going to be taking a look at how to plop a Metahuman head onto a custom character's body, which is something that I think a lot of people want to do because Metahuman bodies are kind of limited in how you can make them look right now. We've also got some free goodies for you to download on the Rokoko resources page. This is a collection of pose assets, live streaming assets, and just things that are going to make this workflow a lot easier. You can find this collection of assets, this .zip, on the Rokoko resources page. It's linked down in the description below, and I recommend going to download that before you get started with this workflow. And included in that collection of free assets are some opacity masks from the YouTuber Monaville. Shout out to Monaville. Their tutorial really helped me understand how to isolate a Metahuman head so that we could put it on a custom character's body. We've got their tutorials down in the description below as well if you want to take kind of a deeper dive into that process. But you can find all of those assets in that Rokoko resources folder at rokoko.com. Finally, I'll just say before we get started, whenever we're live streaming motion capture from Rokoko Studio, you are going to need a Plus subscription. So we're going to cover offline workflows that don't require that subscription, but if you do want to live stream in real time, you'll need to have that subscription. You can find out more information about our subscriptions at rokoko.com or in the description down below. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to go over is just how to add basic body and hand motion capture to your Metahuman. Here I am in Rokoko Studio, and I've already got a bunch of mocap takes I've recorded. If you want to know more about how to actually record and clean up your mocap, you can check out videos that are linked in the description. I'll also note that face capture, like this, can only be live streamed onto Metahuman faces. It can't be retargeted offline. And we're going to cover how to get face capture onto your Metahuman later in this video, but we're not going to focus on that at first. So let's go back. And of course, if we go into one of our takes, let our processing finish, we could go to the export tab and we could export out a single animation. But we're going to cover how to export out a bunch of animations and then batch import them into Unreal. So I'm going to go back out to the main level of my scene. I'm going to select a bunch of just motion capture animations that don't have face capture in them. And then if we go over to the export panel here, you can see that we've got our mocap takes appearing in the clip list. We're going to export out an FBX. For included data, I'm going to make sure that body mesh is selected. You need to export out your mocap with a body mesh for Unreal to be able to import it. We're not going to be exporting out any face capture, so I'm going to leave that blank. And then, unsurprisingly, for the preset, we're going to use Unreal Engine 4. Now, we will add an UE5 compatible skeleton export option in the future, but for right now, for this workflow, we're still going to be able to get everything working perfectly with this UE4 option. You can see it's got an A pose by default here. I'm going to leave all the rest of these settings as are. And if we go down to these three little dots, you can select where you want your motion capture to be exported to. In our case, it's right here in this mocap folder. And then we can hit export clips. So now I'm going to create a blank UE 5.3 project, but this workflow will work with any version of Unreal Engine 5. So now let's prep our project, and there's a few things that we want to do every time we work with Rokoko mocap, or really any mocap in Unreal. the first thing we're going to do is import the third person starter pack. So I'm going to go to add, go to add feature or content pack, and select third person, and I'll hit add to project. And this is going to give us access to the UE4 and UE5 mannequins, as well as some control rigs. You don't want to hit cancel, remember, just X out of this, and here we go. In characters, you can see we got our mannequins. The next thing we're going to do is import our free Rokoko resources folder. You can find that on the resources page at rokoko.com or in the description. And this contains some pose assets and other assets that are going to make live streaming and working with metahumans easier in the future. So here I have my project folder of my Unreal project. Here I've got my Rokoko resources.zip. I'll just open that up. And I'm going to drag this folder into the content folder of my Unreal project. So I'll just boop, drop it in. And as soon as I do that, if we hop back to Unreal, you'll see that we actually see our Rokoko resources folder right here. And when you first import these, some of these assets might not even open up. This pose asset, for instance, if we double click it, it won't do anything, and that's because we don't have a metahuman in our project yet. Similarly, with these bone maps, if we open these up, they're not going to open because we have not enabled the Rokoko plugin, which is the next thing we're going to do. I'm going to go up to Edit, Plugins. I'm going to search for Rokoko, enable it, hit yes. You're going to be asked to do a restart, but we're not going to do that yet because we also need to load in the Metahuman plugin. And you can find both of these plugins on the Unreal Marketplace for free if you don't have them already. And then after that's done, we're going to hit restart. We're going to actually be doing a couple restarts in this process. Restarts are kind of a part of the workflow when it comes to metahumans, so we're just going to get used to that. There we go, we've done our restart, and you can't actually see it, but off screen here, I've got a warning dialog, and it's just asking me to enable missing. So I'm just going to click enable missing on that, and everything should be fine. So the next thing that we need to do, obviously, is get our metahuman. So if I go up to Quixel Bridge, I'm going to open that up. We're not going to cover how to get metahumans. There's lots of tutorials out there about how to build and create metahumans. We'll put some links in the description below, but I've already downloaded a few. We go to local metahumans. You can see these are all my metahumans I have. A little Keanu attempt here. Matt Smith, which this one looks pretty darn good, I have to say. But for this tutorial, we're going to be using Sean, and this blue arrow here means that it's ready to be imported. So let's click it. And as long as we have Unreal open in the background, it's going to import our metahuman into Unreal Engine. There we go. Let's close Quixel. And now we have this metahuman folder here. Now, if we try to open up this blueprint, again, you may or may not be able to see this, but we're going to get a bunch of warnings and dialog boxes. And essentially, after you import a metahuman, you can see some of them coming in here off screen. I'm just going to hit enable missing on any warnings that pop up, and then it's going to ask me for another restart, and yep, we're going to go ahead and do it. Okay, we did our restart. Let's open up our BP Sean blueprint again. And sometimes when you're working with metahumans, they can be a little bit quirky, a little bit, buggy. Sometimes I've found that if we go to the viewport here, it looks like this metahuman did come in with its hair, especially after the restart. But sometimes your metahuman may not have its hair. To fix that bug, I just go back into Quixel and I re-import the metahuman, and it's going to overwrite what's in there and it's going to add the hair back in. It's just a little bug that I've run into before. The other thing that I'm going to do while we're here is I'm going to go to LOD sync and change the forced LOD to 0. Now, LOD stands for level of detail, and by default, it's -1, which essentially means that the metahuman is going to be changing its quality level based on how close the camera is to that metahuman. And that's not what we want for this workflow, so I'm going to force the metahuman to always stay at the highest level of detail. I'm going to hit compile and save. And I usually do this first thing every time I import a metahuman. Okay, prep work done for our metahuman. I can even throw him in the scene here just so we have him. And now let's go and import that Rokoko motion capture that we exported from Rokoko Studio. So I'm going to go back up to the main content level, right click. Let's just create a mocap folder. I'm going to open it up, and then we'll go to Add, Import to Game. And here, I'm going to go find some of that motion capture that we exported earlier, right? Boxing, idle waiting, and wave hello. I think those are the ones that we selected, so I'm going to open them up. And what's great is we can do multiple animations as we're doing here. So once you hit open, we're going to get this dialog box. We're actually going to uncheck import mesh. Now, what's really important here is under skeleton, we want to go and select SK Mannequin Skeleton. And this is why it's so important to import that template pack that we got at the beginning of the video, because it gives us access to these skeletons that we can import onto. And so we're going to select every time SK Mannequin Skeleton or the UE4 Mannequin right here. Select it, animation length, exported time, all looks good, import all. Okay, look at how easy that was. We open up these animations and we've got our motion capture onto the UE4 skeleton just right away. So this is really great. It was easy to do. Look, we've got all of our other animations here. Here's another one. But what we need to do now is transfer this animation to the UE5 mannequin, because metahumans are compatible with the UE5 mannequin and not the UE4 mannequin. So in order to do that, it's actually super simple. Let's close this out. And again, that starter content pack that we imported earlier, if we go to characters, UE mannequin, 4, rigs, you can see that we have this pre-built IK retargeter UE4 Manny to UE5 Manny. So let's open this up here. And as you can see, all this work has already been done for us. If we double click on one of our animations, look at that. It's perfectly being transferred from the UE4 mannequin to the UE5 mannequin, which is going to be compatible with our metahuman. Now, in order to actually use the animation on this mannequin, we want to select all of our motion capture anims here. We got our 3, and we're going to hit export selected animation, and I'm going to throw them back into that mocap folder where we put our other motion capture. And right off the bat, if we close this out, look, now we have our UE4 mannequin with its animation, but we also have the UE5 mannequin with the same animation. Now, although the UE5 mannequin is compatible with metahumans, we still need to actually tell Unreal Engine that they are compatible. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to go back to our metahuman folder. I'm going to go find Sean, our blueprint. Let's open it up. Let's dock it. And if we click body, we can go to the skeletal mesh asset for the body. Let's double click this and open it up. Here we go. And now if we go to the skeleton tab, so we have this very odd looking character. But what is so amazing about the new skeleton for the metahumans is that they are a universal skeleton for all the different sizes of metahumans. So no matter if you have a metahuman that's, extra tall, extra short, skinny, bigger, normal, whatever it is, it might look a little bit weird in here, but this skeleton is gonna work for any metahuman that you have in your scene. So in order to tell Unreal Engine that this skeleton is compatible with the UE5 mannequin, I'm gonna go up to Window, I'm gonna go to Asset Details. You can see we have compatible skeletons. What we're gonna do, hit plus. Then under None, we're gonna go find the SK mannequin. This is the UE5 mannequin. And if we add it in and then we hit save, we can go close out these 2 tabs here. But now our metahuman is going to be able to access our motion capture. So let's actually go ahead and put our mocap on this metahuman. I'm going to go and create a new level sequence. Call it metahuman. Hit save. I'm going to drag my BP Sean into sequencer. Now, as soon as I do this, we're actually going to hop into the animation mode in Unreal. This is just a little bit easier when we're working with animation, so it's nice that we hop into here. However, we do not need these control rigs yet, so I'm going to delete them. Then under body, if we go to plus, animation, look, boxing, boxing, put that in. If we double click on the animation, it'll expand out the track and we can change the out point so we can see the whole thing. Hit play. Look at that. How easy was that? We got our Rokoko motion capture onto our Metahuman, in just a couple of clicks. This is awesome. And of course we can, drag our animation around. If we want to add a new animation, we can just delete that. Sometimes you'll get some funkiness here with the Metahumans, and occasionally, if things like this happen, I tend to just, maybe I'll delete this, delete the Metahuman. I might just need to go in, and Metahumans can be a little bit quirky in that way. But I'll just re-add my Metahuman to the scene. Then let's bring him back in. We can delete these, add in our animation again. We could add in some of the other animations, but it's really easy to go between all the different animations that we have. So let's use this one now. Here we go. Now you may be wondering if it's possible to just retarget our facial mocap animations from Rokoko Studio using this method. Again, unfortunately, we can't. However, we're going to go over facial motion capture animation in a second. And before we do, I want to cover how we can do some editing of this motion capture using some provided IK control rigs from Metahuman. Now, sometimes, if it's a social media post or something, maybe you don't need to do any editing at all, and this is just, ready to send. However, to get a really AAA result, maybe fix clipping issues, things like this right here, like the thumb going into the leg, some wonkiness with the fingers that we might need to go ahead and fix. It's really easy to do motion capture editing for Metahumans because they provide an IK control rig for us to use. Now to do so, we're going to go back to frame 0, and I'm going to right click my Metahuman, and I'm going to right click the body. And if we go up here, you can see we have bake to control rig. Now we could bake to an FK control rig. That's a forward kinematic control rig. But an FK control rig means that essentially, to move the location of the hand, first we need to move the upper arm, then we would need to move the lower arm, then we would need to move the hand. So we'd need to go down the chain. An IK control rig, or an inverse kinematic control rig, basically means that if we want to move the hand, we can just drag the hand wherever we want, and the rest of the arm is going to follow the hand. So that makes mocap editing a lot easier. So to bake to that IK control rig, if you can't see this Metahuman control rig option here, sometimes you need to maybe check that on and off. But in our case, we can. So I'm going to select it. And then it's going to ask me if I want to bake this animation to the control rig. And I do. We can also reduce the keys if we want. I don't really want to. And we're going to hit create. And importantly, this is only going to bake between the in and the out points. So you can even see here, we left off a little bit of the end of this animation. That's fine in this case, but it's important to note that if you forget to expand out the out point of your timeline, it's only going to bake up until that out point. So you might, not bake some needed animation if you forget to set that out point at the end of your animation. So this is awesome. Look, we've got a control rig on our Metahuman, and by default, the control rig for the Metahumans is going to be an IK foot control. So as I was saying before, we can just move the foot and the arm is going to follow. I'll undo that. And an FK arm control. So that means that we can't do that here, right? If I move the hand, it's not gonna look so good, but we could move the, upper arm and then the lower arm if we wanted to do our editing this way. We don't. We want an IK system for the hands as well as for the feet. So the way that we enable that is we're going to go up to the top of our control rig. We're going to twirl down on global control. And you can see here we have arm L, left arm, FK to IK switch, and a little checkbox. If we check this on, it's going to mean that our arms become IK instead of FK. Now, this is keyframed, you can see, all the way across. So first I need to go and delete these keyframes for both the left and the right arm, because we want the whole animation to be IK, and we don't want to have to go key by key to key on the IK. So if I hit these checkboxes now, you can see in the scene, we get a new option and we get a new handle. And now I've got IK arms as well as IK legs. So this is super awesome. It makes doing our mocap editing way easier when we can use an IK control rig. Now, let's say that we did want to maybe edit this arm a little bit to not be clipping into our character. So if I go and select this and I bring the arm out a little bit, because we have keyframes on every single frame of this animation, we're not actually going to be able to affect the animation. And that's because we need to add an additive layer to this control rig that we can make changes to. And the great thing about an additive layer is that it's non-destructive. We're still going to have our motion capture, but we're also going to be able to make edits to the location of all these nulls. So in order to add an additive layer, I'm going to go to plus on the control rig and hit additive. Then I'll just make sure that this layer covers our entire animation. And as you can see, there are no keyframes on this layer. So if we wanted to just start getting really crazy, I can show you how all of these, oop, that's the wrong one there. Let's drag the hand. Let's maybe do something like this. And look, all these changes are going to be persistent throughout the animation, but we still have our motion capture underneath those changes. And the other great thing about an additive layer is, say we don't like what we're doing, we can always just go, delete that layer, and look, we got our original animation safe and sound here. However, let's go and let's make some edits here to this animation to fix a couple things. So I'm going to go back, re-add my additive layer, drag it out, and let's just go right here at the very beginning. And what I like to do is put in an initial safe keyframe. So I'm going to grab our left hand here. And if I hit a keyframe right here, this is essentially a key with the original position of this hand. And I like to have this in case we ever want to go back to how the animation was before we did edits. But I'll go one frame forward, and then maybe I'll just move this hand out a little bit, and I will add a keyframe. We could also turn on auto keying, although it's a little bit dangerous if you forget that it's on. But now, look what we have. We have this animation, and if we ever wanted to go back to how it originally was, I can just zoom in here. We really got to zoom in because we went just one frame forward. I can right click, copy that keyframe, and then if we pasted that keyframe right here, we'd also just hit Control V. That might be easier. There we go. We went back to how the animation originally was, right? So that can be really useful just to get back to how the animation originally was. The other thing that I find can be useful is that we might want to fix some of these funky hands, and this is because of the way that the Unreal Engine 5 skeleton interfaces with the Metahuman. We just want to make a slight change here. So if I go and I select this little arrow, I can actually change all of these fingers at once. So I'm just going to rotate that over. That looks more correct, right? That's how it should be. I'm going to select this arrow for the thumb. That looks correct. And maybe we'll do the same thing over here. There we go. We'll do the same thing for the thumb again. Ooh, I don't know about this one. Maybe like that. Maybe like that. It's going to be different every time. But there we go. And again, these are going to be, I didn't really keyframe those. So they're just going to be persistent fixes over the course of the entire animation. Ooh, looks great. So hopefully you can see that this is a very easy way to do mocap editing. You know, again, let's say we just want to make the head keyframed here. Let's add a keyframe, and ooh, they should have been looking more up. Let's do that, add a keyframe, and we can see he's looking up, and then up, he needs to go back to where it was. Let's add another keyframe. Let's copy this original, paste it back, and we've just keyframed a little up, look back down. So this is, again, a very easy way to edit your motion capture in Unreal Engine. Okay, so now let's talk about how we can live stream motion capture in real time onto our metahumans from Rokoko Studio. And that's including facial motion capture. So I'm gonna go up and I'm actually gonna delete all this because it'll kind of screw with what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna delete that. So there's actually a couple different ways that we can live stream our mocap onto the metahuman. I'm gonna cover the way that I prefer in this video, but we will be putting up another tutorial with some of the other options in the future, so you can check out the description for those links when they go live. I'm also gonna jump back into the main selection workspace of Unreal. And the first thing that we need to do when we're live streaming motion capture onto our metahuman is we would go up to Edit Plugins and we would enable that Rokoko plugin, right? But we've already gone ahead and done that when we created this project. The next thing we would do is go and open up our blueprint of Sean. I'm gonna select the body again, because we're gonna be transferring our motion capture onto the body of the metahuman. I'm gonna go to this skeletal mesh asset, double click it. And from here, we don't wanna go to skeleton. Instead, we're gonna go to the blueprint panel. And sometimes, especially if you've already associated the metahuman skeleton with the UE5 Manny, it might open up to the UE5 Manny blueprint, but we want to go to this retarget underscore metahuman base scale ANMBP. This is the blueprint we want to be modifying for live streaming. So by default, this blueprint is going to open up in the event graph, but we want to go ahead and open the anim graph. And this is where we're going to be doing our work. The first thing we'll do is we'll right click, search Rokoko, B, we want a Rokoko body pose node. And I'm gonna add that to the scene and I'm gonna wire that into my output pose. We don't need this retarget pose from mesh. Put it down here in exile. Next, we're gonna go and create two variables. The first variable is going to be named Rokoko actor name. And I'm going to make it into a name type variable. The next variable, let's add another one, is going to be Rokoko bone map. And the type of variable this is going to be is, let's select, in search, we're going to type for Rokoko, Rokoko body map data, and then go to class reference. There we go. Now I'm going to add these both into our blueprint, get for both of them, get. And then I'm going to wire in the Rokoko bone map into retarget asset. And I'm going to wire Rokoko actor name into Rokoko actor name. There we go. Now let's hit compile and save. So after we hit compile, we get a few new options under the Rokoko body pose node. And the first one is Rokoko actor name. So for Rokoko actor name, we want to enter in, and I'm just going to go and select an animation that has some facial motion capture on it as well. We want to use the same actor name that you used for your motion capture or for your live mocap, right? In our case, it's Sam. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to type in Sam. I'm going to click away, and very importantly, you need to click apply. I forget to do this all the time, but you need to click away, click apply to make sure that it actually applies. Now the next setting is this Rokoko bone map. And if I toggle this down, you can see we actually have some options that are here. And these options are here because they were in that free Rokoko resources folder that we imported earlier. And now under bone maps, remember we tried to open this up earlier, it wouldn't open. Well, now we have our Rokoko plugin loaded, so we can open up this bone map. And I've already gone ahead and provided a few bone maps for you to use. Specifically for this workflow, we have a Metahuman bone map. So I'm going to load that in. And again, don't forget to click apply, compile, and save. Now we're almost done prepping this Metahuman blueprint, but the last thing we need to do is put our Metahuman into a T-pose. And that's because any character we're live streaming to from Rokoko Studio, it needs to be in a T-pose to accurately receive that motion capture. So I've also provided an asset that makes it really easy to get our Metahuman into a T-pose, no matter the type of Metahuman you have. So I'm going to go back to that Rokoko resources folder, and look, we have this Metahuman base scale pose asset. So let me open this up here. And you can see we have pose underscore 0. We turn the weight all the way up. Metahuman in a T-pose. So that's great. So I'm going to select this, make it 0, close this out. We're going to go back to our blueprint, and we are going to drag that pose asset into our blueprint. Then I'm going to right click on that pose asset, convert to pose by name, select it, and then if you recall, that pose name was called pose underscore 0. So that's what we need to enter here. Let's wire it into the component pose. And now compile. Look at that. Metahuman is in a T-pose, and we didn't have to pose it ourselves because we have this asset in that Rokoko resources folder. So if we go back to our main level, you can see our Metahuman is not in a T-pose, and that's because we need to select it. If we select the body, you can see it's in animation pose, use custom mode, but we want to make sure it's using that retarget Metahuman base scale blueprint we just made all those changes to. So as soon as we load this in, look at that. I know I keep gasping, but it's pretty easy to do. It's so much better than it used to be. And there we go. Our Metahuman is in a T-pose and ready to receive our motion capture from Rokoko Studio. So talking about Rokoko Studio, we got to jump back into Rokoko at this point, and we have to actually enable our live streaming for our either animation or for our live suit. This workflow is the exact same for a pre-recorded animation or for a suit that is running, in real time. If you want to be a VTuber or something like that, and you are in your suit doing your mocap in real time and you want that to be reflected in Unreal Engine, it's the same workflow for a pre-recorded animation like this one. So in order to enable live streaming, we'll go up to that live streaming panel, and you can see that as long as we're a Plus subscriber, we have access to all the different live streaming plugins for all the different softwares. And here is our Unreal Engine plugin here. And if we click the gearbox, you can see that we're going to be using port 14043. Now by default, this should be 14043 and this should be fine, but I'm just going to remember that number and I'll show you how it can come in handy for troubleshooting later. So let's go ahead and activate it. We're live. And then we're just going to play this animation in the background, and it's going to act as if we had a live suit in our scene. So at this point, we'll come back to Unreal Engine, and I'm going to go to Window, Virtual Production, Live Link, and then under Source, because we have loaded in our Rokoko plugin, it's going to have this option, Rokoko Studio Source, and you can see under Network Address, 14043. So if you are not seeing this studio option, it's probably because your port number is not matching what's in Rokoko Studio. But in our case, we do have this option, so let's hit it. And there we go. We've got body and face motion capture coming from Rokoko Studio into Unreal Engine. Now, if we want to get that mocap onto our Metahuman, I'm going to select it. And then under the BP Sean 01, the top level here of our Metahuman, under AR Face Kit Subject, I'm going to select the face, and you can see we kind of snap in to a pose, and if we want this to be running in real time, we're just going to select this checkbox. Look at that. We've got our motion capture in real time. Let's select our Metahuman and just drag him up a little bit so he's on the floor. We have everything running in real time. This is transmitting our motion capture from Rokoko Studio into Unreal onto our Metahuman. Now, it's actually running a little bit laggy, and that's because I've got OBS and a million other things running to record this tutorial. But normally, I really get one-to-one real-time performance for things even as complicated as a Metahuman. And because I gave you that pose asset, these fingers already look really good, and this just looks great right off the bat. So it is actually possible to record this animation that's happening on this Metahuman in Unreal Engine right here using the take recorder. So we'll go to Cinematics, Take Recorder, and we could load in our Metahuman. And if we hit record, it's going to record all the animation that is happening right here on this Metahuman. Now, we don't really recommend using this method of recording as your main motion capture method, right? In theory, you could have a live suit in Rokoko Studio, not a recording, and you could hit record, and you could record your motion capture directly to this character. But there's a couple disadvantages with doing it that way. The first one is that if you record your mocap only into Unreal Engine, it means that that motion capture is locked in not only to Unreal, but to this project. And if that project gets accidentally deleted, or if it gets corrupted, well, you've just lost the only take of motion capture you have. So that's why we recommend always trying to, unless you're doing something like VTubing or a live performance where you need a live suit driving your metahuman in real time, we always recommend recording your motion capture into Rokoko Studio, because it just keeps your mocap safer, and you also get to use all the cleanup tools that we have in Rokoko Studio to get the best from your mocap. However, even though I know I just said not to use the take recorder to record your motion capture, the one place it can come in handy is to record your Rokoko facial mocap to your metahuman. As I said before, you cannot retarget facial motion capture in the sequencer like we did at the beginning of the tutorial. It just doesn't work currently, at least not in the methods that we have. So if you have it, put it in the comments down below. So if you do have a recording that you made in Rokoko Studio using the Rokoko facial motion capture workflow, and you want to get that onto a metahuman, the way I recommend doing it is basically setting up live streaming and then recording that facial motion capture onto your metahuman using the take recorder. And let's go ahead and record that right now just to show you how we can do it. So I'll hit record, and we will record some mocap. Again, I put my Sean into the source area here, so it's recording anything that's happening on our Sean character. That's enough. We don't need a whole ton here. Let's hit stop. And we have just recorded some animations into Unreal Engine, and we can go find those. We go into animation, and look, here we go. We've got our facial motion capture looking great on our metahuman. And if we want to put this onto our metahuman in sequencer, let's go and close out our take recorder. Let's actually go to our metahuman Sean here. I'm going to uncheck our AR kit. I'm going to reset this. And then sometimes, again, metahumans can be a little bit finicky. So I'm actually going to go and we want to delete our metahuman. Just going to hit yes. I'm going to add my metahuman Sean back into my scene. Then I'm going to go and open up our level sequence. I'll add Sean into our level sequence. Delete the control rigs. And this time, if I want to access that facial mocap, I can hit plus, animation. Look at that. And now we've got our Rokoko Studio facial motion capture on our metahuman in sequencer. And we could also, again, add in that body animation if we wanted to, and they're right here, as you can see. But frankly, I would prefer to actually go in and use the retargeting workflow that we did at the beginning of the video instead of using this method for the body, because while we can't retarget the facial motion capture any other way, we do have a better way of doing the body, and that's what we went over at the beginning of this video. So the next thing we're going to go over, and it's something that I think people are very curious about, is how to use Metahuman Animator for facial motion capture and sync that up with a take for body and hand motion capture done with Rokoko, right? Metahuman Animator is an absolutely amazing facial motion capture system. It's probably the highest level of fidelity that anyone who isn't a part of a AAA studio can have access to right out the bat for free. But because it's an offline system, which means it isn't in real time, there's kind of a hacky way that we can make sure to record both Metahuman Animator and Rokoko at the same time. Okay, so here I am. I've got my Rokoko head rig set up. I've got my iPhone with Metahuman Live Link, Metahuman Animator set up on my phone, right? It's all running. It's on the screen right now, you can see. And what we're gonna do is basically just trigger these at the same time. But as I said, what I'm also gonna do is do a clap and kind of close my mouth at the same time, right? And that way I know how to sync these clips up later, because these are two different systems we're gonna have to combine in Unreal. So let's record. Let's do a little recording. Let's get it. And there's a 3-second delay on the Rokoko side, so I might hit that first and then hit Metahuman Animator. And also, whenever I use Metahuman Animator, I always do a neutral pose and a teeth pose for the Metahuman performance, which is a part of that workflow, right? Okay, let's do it. To be or not to be? That is the question. What's the question? To be, I don't know. I actually don't know. I was told that's the question. Hit pause on both. Funny or not, that's what I came up with. So we're not going to go through how to use Metahuman Animator. There's a ton of tutorials about that online. We've put links in the description below, but it's a very standard process at this point that we don't deviate from. The only thing that we do want to do for this workflow is once we get to the Metahuman performance step, under head movement mode, we're going to disable this, because after all, we already have our head movement covered with our motion capture we've recorded, and we don't want our motion capture to be fighting the head movement that was recorded by Metahuman Animator. So our process is done, as I've exported the animation, and looks pretty darn good. So we've got the facial motion capture aspect. Now we need our body mocap, right? And in order to get our body mocap, we just go back to Rokoko Studio. We have our Metahuman Animator recording right here, right? We would export it the same way we did before. Make sure that we have body mesh enabled, Unreal Engine 4, check, 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 all these look good. We would hit export, and then come back to Unreal Engine. We're gonna go ahead and add, import to game, that Metahuman Anim, open it up. Same thing as at the beginning of the tutorial, uncheck import mesh, go and find the UE4 mannequin skeleton, import, UE4 mannequin skeleton, looks good. We need to get it onto the UE5 though, right, to work with our metahuman. So to do that, we'll go back, characters, UE mannequin 4, rigs. We can also go, and if we just type in retarget, it's going to bring up all the retargeting assets, and we want that UE4 Manny to UE5 Manny. We go to Metahuman Anim. Looks good. Let's export this back to our mocap folder. Close this out, and now we've got our Metahuman Animator sequence right here on our UE5 mannequin. So let's go to Sequencer, and let's combine that facial motion capture with the body motion capture. So I'm going to add Sean into my sequencer. Same thing as before. Delete the control rigs. There we go. Now for body, I'm going to go and I'm going to load in that, what is it called? Metahuman _ anim 01. Double click to expand out the timeline so we can see it all. There we go, looking good. Then I'm going to go back to frame 0. Under face, I'm going to go find to be or not to be, as we named it, our animation sequence from Metahuman Animator. There we go. And at this point, all we need to do is remember how we synced up the mouth close and the clap. Well, let's go find the clap. Right there, that's the clap. And then I'm going to turn off snapping. I'm just going to move the face animation so that it right there syncs up. And there we go. We've got synced body motion capture from Rokoko Studio, synced up with that really, really good looking Metahuman Animator. Ooh, facial motion capture. Look at that. Just looking so good. So much little things happening there in the face. And of course, again, if we wanted to fix these funky hands, we would go through the same control rig workflow that we did earlier. Let's just do it. Why not? We'll go to body, right click, bake to control rig, Metahuman control rig. We do want to make it. Let's hit create. Remember, it's only going to do it from the in point to the out point. So we left off a little bit again, but it's fine. We don't need that, obviously. First thing I'm going to go to global control. We want to switch those arms into IK instead of FK. So delete the keyframes on those tracks. Turn them into IK arms. We're going to hit plus, create an additive layer. Make sure that it covers the whole animation. Then we can go and do some little housekeeping on some of these guys. Look at that. That's how it's supposed to look. Look at that thumb. That doesn't look right, but it's an easy fix. Joop. Oh, I selected the wrong one. That's right. This guy. That's the key. And maybe we need to... we could spend more time making this look a little bit more right. Let's say that looks right. I'm not sure if it does. Yeah. But there we go. We can go in and do any other edits that we would need to using that control rig system. Let's say, again, he doesn't look maybe right at the audience or something. If this is where our camera is, we want to turn that head. It's an easy thing to just do whatever edits or keyframe whatever edits we want to do. Okay, so the final thing I want to go over, which is kind of like the golden goose of metahumans right now, is how do we add this metahuman head and all the fidelity we have on this metahuman head onto a better character mesh body, right? Metahumans are pretty limited in what the bodies can look like and what they can wear currently. So how do we get this head and plop it onto a more interesting character? And I'm going to show you the way that I do this. There are so many ways to go about doing this, and there are better ways than how I do it, I'm sure. But this is how I'm currently doing it, and I'll put other workflows for methods of doing this that I've found helpful in the description below. So to get this going, what we're going to do is I'm going to go, and first thing, we're just going to, get a clean project again. Let's delete all this, and we need to go and find a character that we want to put our metahuman head onto. So I'm going to go and I'm going to use a UE4 compatible character that I already have from the marketplace. I know this is going to work with Rokoko motion capture really easily. So I'm going to add this to our project. Metahuman workflow, this one right here. And if we go back to our content browser here, and we also go back to the selection mode, so we just have a little bit more screen real estate, we've got our Knight Gerard right here. So I want to use this skeletal mesh, and we're essentially going to get rid of this character's head, and we're going to plop this guy onto here. So the first way I'm going to do that, I'm actually going to hide Sean, and I'm going to go select my character, and I'm going to center it in the scene. So select the skeletal mesh and just hit that arrow to reset it back to the origin point of the scene. Now again, there's many ways to get rid of specific parts of a character model. In my case, one of my preferred methods is to create an invisible material. Let's call this clear. I just created a material that when I apply this material to anything, it's going to make it invisible in the scene. So I'm going to select this material. I'm going to select it, change the blend mode to translucent. Then I'm going to right click and add a constant. And a constant is just a value, right? So I'm going to wire that into opacity. And what this is saying is the opacity value is 0, whatever I put in here, 0 in this case. I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to hit save. Now, I can go to my character, I can select the skeletal mesh component in this case, and I can go through and start adding this clear material to all the head bits of our character. And we need one more, which is the body. Look at that. So again, and don't come at me in the comments. I know there are better ways of doing this within a blueprint or within the skeletal mesh. This is just the way that I like to do it. So I'm not saying it's the best way. I just like doing it this way personally. So that's great. Our character is essentially ready to have a metahuman head plopped into this little neck hole here. So let's go and let's make our metahuman visible again. And I'm going to go through and apply this clear material to all the bits of this metahuman that we don't need. So you'd think I'd be able to just go to body and load it in here, but that occasionally does not work. So what we actually need to do is if I select our metahuman and I hit Control E, it's going to open up that blueprint again from the beginning. I'm going to go to body, and I'm actually going to pull this down a little bit here. We're going to go to body, and here we have the material for our body. Load it in, and no more hands. Load it in for the feet. No more feet. Same thing for the torso. Same thing for the legs. So at this point, let's compile and save. At this point, we've got almost everything isolated. In fact, we do have everything isolated, but for this head, we still have all this flesh down here at the bottom that we don't need, right? This is potentially going to poke out of this character mesh or something in ways that we don't want. So we want to take this head and we only want to keep everything above the neckline. So really conveniently, again, as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, we have in that Rokoko resources folder an opacity mask folder. So opacity masks, anything that's black is going to be ignored. Anything that's white is not. And we're going to add this mask to the skin material of the head, and it's going to get rid of all this extra bit at the bottom here. Now, in order to find the head material here, we have a couple ways of doing it, but it is located at Metahumans, Common, Face, Materials, Baked, and it's this M head baked. And if you can't find this and you're kind of going through the synthesized materials list, if you ever want to go to the bottom of these, you can kind of get all the way back to that original material by doing it that way, right? But this is this M head baked. And so for this material here, we're going to select it. We're going to change the blend mode to masked. Then I'm going to go back to that Rokoko resources folder. We're going to select, I think I'm going to be using this far left opacity mask, but if you want to cut off more of the metahuman head, you can use this one as well, or make your own. And again, shout out to Monaville on YouTube for providing these opacity masks. I'm going to wire this in to that opacity mask node or parameter that showed up when we changed it to masked. And now if we hit apply, what do you think is going to happen? Save. We've just gotten rid of all that extra, skin that we just did not need. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our metahuman. I'm going to go all the way up and I'm going to center it in our scene again, just so now it's perfectly centered with our character, right? They're at the exact same point. And if we load in our character into sequencer, and then we load in our metahuman into sequencer, we delete the control rigs. We don't need those. We actually don't even need the body, right? We just need that face. What we can do is hit plus on the metahuman, attach, and then go to our character model, select it, and it's going to give us a list of bones that we can attach this metahuman to. So I'm going to select the head. And once we do this, we're going to get a little funkiness here. And if we ever want to change this pivot offset, I'm going to hold down Alt and then middle mouse click and move it to where it's a little bit easier to use. You can right click and go to pivot, set as pivot offset. But in this case, we're just going to rotate this 90 degrees, move it back over, kind of do some final adjustments. I might uncheck snapping, Maybe we'll just do it like that. And we could always cut off more of this skin if we wanted to. We'll see how that looks. It might be intersecting with this collar a little bit, but that looks pretty good. And because we attached the metahuman to our character, it is now stuck on our character. So for our character, we can load in our Rokoko animation, and we have a tutorial on how to load in animation onto UE4 compatible skeletons. We actually need to go and tell Unreal that this character model is compatible with the UE4 skeleton. So I'm going to go to our character mesh here. Let's open it up. Let's go to skeleton. I'm going to close this to show you where to find it, but we're on the skeleton of this character model that we're using. I'm going to go to Window, Asset Details, Plus, and I'm going to tell Unreal, hey, this character is actually compatible with the UE4 skeleton. So I'm going to make sure that it knows that it is. I'm going to hit save. And once I tell Unreal that it is compatible with the UE4 skeleton, I get access to all of the UE4 skeleton animations that are in this project, including our Metahuman Anim 01. So there we go. Now we've got our Metahuman character animation looking great. And of course, if I want to load in the facial motion capture, let's go to Face, Animation, To Be or Not To Be, we named it. This is the Metahuman performance that we exported. And now I just need to go and make sure that the clap and the mouth close are synced just like when we recorded it. And look at this. We now have Metahuman Animator, facial motion capture, super high fidelity. Let's set the endpoint to here so we don't need to see that weird neutral pose stuff. To be or not to be? That is the question. And there you go. Works really well. And again, this is a little bit hacky. There's a bunch of other ways to do it, but I like doing it this way because it means that the metahuman, you know, already has its hair on it. The groom assets are all looking correct. It's all, I find it's actually a little bit easier to do it this way, and it saves me a little time. So this is my preferred method. And that's it. That is all of the current best metahuman workflows. Unreal Engine changes really fast. Metahumans change really fast. And, you know, our Rokoko workflows keep changing. So make sure to, you know, keep checking out our channel, our Instagram for any updates that we make to these tutorials, and put any questions that you have down in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer them. Although, you know, workflows vary and everyone's situation is a little bit different. Hopefully what you saw in this video helps you make more progress trying to use these beautiful, beautiful metahumans. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye, everyone. To be or not to be? That is the question. What? What's the question? To be, I don't know. I actually don't know. I was told that's the question.